We've learned that the rig is a system which lets the animator move the 3D model and its components by setting the keys on its controls. Now let's try this theory in practice. But before we do so, first we need to make our scene a little more interesting by adding an obstacle for our plane. Feel free to add more than one if you want, or perhaps a different shape than mine. Just have fun with it. All right, let's go to Create. Here at the top, we have NURBS primitives. These are the NURBS object, which I've mentioned before, that are used to create the controls for the models. For our plane, the NURBS circles were used, but we're not going to create them ourselves, so let's move on. Next, we have the Polygon Primitives tab, and here I'm going to select the torus. Also, if we go back to the Create menu and click on its bar at the very top, we can pull that menu off so that we have it open at all times when it's necessary. For example, if you want to create more than one shape, you don't have to go back to the full menu list and search for the right tab each time. And actually, if we pull the Polygon Primitives tab, that would be even easier. And you can do that with any tab that has the bar at the top with the dotted lines. And when you're done, you can close them. Since I've mentioned different arrangement options for the menu items, I'll show you how to change the layout of already existing panels in our window. You can pull off any of the panels by dragging on the label with its name, or if it doesn't have one, then on the dotted lines. If you don't want it as a separate floating window, but you want to change its location, drag it to the place you want, and hold it until the blue lines show up, showing you the edge where it will be placed at if you release your mouse. Let's focus on our obstacle now. When you create a new object in your scene, it's a good practice to give it a name so that your scene is in order, especially if you're working with multiple objects. When a new polygon primitive is created, we get a list of a few parameters which we can change. Each type of object has its own set of parameters. We can find it below the channel box by clicking on our shape's default name, which is under the inputs. Our torus has a radius parameter, which is important for us if we want the torus to fit our plane. Instead of guessing the right value, we can click on the radius label and then middle mouse drag right or left until you reach your desired size. You can use this method to change any of the channel's values. If you have time later, I encourage you to create different types of polygon primitives and play with their parameters to get the feeling of how many different objects you can create just by changing these values. Now, I'm going to position my hoop where I want, then I'm going to add the torus to a separate display layer and set it to reference mode so that I can't select it and move it by mistake. There's also another way to avoid selecting geometry by mistake. Go here, click on this little arrow to expand the selectability options. You can click on this rhombus sign to turn the mesh selection off. Now you won't be able to select any geometry. Usually, an animator would turn all of these off because there might be different types of elements in the scene which you don't want to key, like joints, IK handles, lights, or cameras, except for this little curve, which lets us select the NURBS curves. So it could be a good habit when opening your Maya file to make sure you turn these options off before making any changes to your scene.